Hello and welcome to Waywayves. In this video, we begin in Southern Africa, where nature has exposed every weakness we chose to ignore. On January 18, 2026, South Africa officially declared a national disaster. But the story did not begin that day, and it will not end with emergency declarations. Since late 2025, relentless rainfall linked to the La Nina climate pattern has battered Mozambique, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. Across the region, more than 200 lives have been lost. Entire communities have been displaced, roads have vanished, bridges have collapsed, rivers have reclaimed land we pretended to own. Mozambique has carried the heaviest burden. Authorities report at least 103 deaths, while Zimbabwe has recorded 70, and South Africa at least 30, and over 640,000 people affected. In central and southern provinces, rainfall exceeded 700 millimeters, a volume no drainage system, formal or informal, was built to handle. In South Africa, Limpopo and Mpumalanga became ground zero. Damages in Limpopo alone are estimated at over $240 million. Schools were washed away, clinics shut down, transport corridors snapped, and even the famous Kruger National Park, a symbol of African conservation and tourism, was forced to close. The army had to deploy helicopters to rescue tourists and staff stranded on rooftops.
Tens of thousands of people forced to leave their homes. Some wait on rooftops until help arrives. It's a desperate attempt to get on any helicopter that's managed to reach communities cut off by floods. The rescued are taken to the nearest humanitarian coordination center. Some of them are injured, suffering from exhaustion and hypothermia.
It's bad, but we had rescued about 500 yesterday for today, and now we're ready to rescue another more. We see them, a lot of the animals, and some peoples are on the trees. But we are ready to do all things we have to know.
Several rivers have burst their banks because of weeks and months of heavy rains. All this used to be farmland. You can still see some of the banana trees and the maize submerged in water. In some areas, it's difficult traveling by road, and this is how people are getting from one place to another.
The National Park alone is estimated at hundreds and millions of rands. It has to be noted that this park has already seen flood damage back in 2023 and is still recovering from that. To help aid the recovery process, the minister announced a fund called the San Parks Kruger Recovery Fund. Also, in Mozambique, flooding has led to the displacement of 500,000 people, and it's also the government has declared a national emergency. Observers noted that this flood could be even worse than the flood back in the 2000s.
Streets have turned into rivers, homes are flooded, and many communities are now cut off. In Mozambique, large parts of low-lying areas, including districts near the capital Maputo, are underwater. Officials say nearly 70,000 people have been forced to flee from their homes. Rescue teams or volunteers are using small boats to reach families trapped by rising water.
I was very scared. Leaving was possible, but coming back was very difficult. The water is very powerful, but thank God we survived. We are alive.
When wildlife sanctuaries require military evacuation, something fundamental is broken. But let's be very clear, this was not just rain. This was climate stress colliding with decades of infrastructure neglect, uncontrolled urban expansion, and policy fragmentation. Floods do not kill people, but systems fail people. And here is why the timing becomes uncomfortable. The African Union's official theme for 2026 is assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems. That is not a coincidence, it is an admission. For years, we spoke about water visions, sanitation targets, and climate adaptation strategies. Meanwhile, population growth outpaced planning. Cities expanded without drainage, informal settlements were built on floodplains, rivers were treated as waste channels instead of strategic assets. The result, a secondary disaster. In Mozambique, flooding triggered a cholera outbreak. Why, you may ask? Because displacement centers lacked sanitation systems capable of absorbing shock. When water infrastructure fails, diseases move faster than aid. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Africa does not have a rainfall problem. Africa has a water governance problem. We have rivers that cross borders, but policies that stop at checkpoints. We have data on climate risk, but budgets that ignore it. We respond with relief instead of redesign. This is where strategy must replace sympathy. Transboundary water basins like the Limpopo and Zambezi should be engines of cooperation, energy, agriculture, and trade. Instead, they become seasonal weapons of destruction. When we say intelligence without direction is confusion, this is what we mean. The data is there, the forecasters are there. What has been missing is the political courage to build systems for a future that no longer looks like the past. We cannot stop the rain, but we must master where it goes. Now, let's move to the west. Let's move to Guinea, where politics, minerals, and realism just collided. On January 22, 2026, the African Union's Peace and Security Council formally recommended lifting Guinea's suspension. With that decision, Guinea returned from the cold. And this matters because after the 2021 military coup led by General Mamadi Doumbouya, Guinea was treated as a constitutional outcast. Sanctions followed, diplomatic doors closed, democracy, we were told, must be defended. But fast forward, on December 28, 2025, presidential elections were held. Doumbouya won with 86.72% of the vote. On January 17, 2026, he was inaugurated in Conakry. And look closely at the guest list. Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima was there, representing President Bola Tinubu. So were the presidents of Rwanda, Senegal, and Libya. This was not symbolic, this was strategic recognition. Now, let's ask the uncomfortable question. Why now? The answer lies on the ground. Guinea holds the world's largest reserves of bauxite, the raw material essential for aluminium. Aluminium is not optional in the modern world. It powers construction, aviation, electric vehicles, and renewable energy systems. Global supply chains cannot afford instability in Guinea, so the African Union chose to be pragmatic and flexible. They prioritized what they called a swift return to constitutional order, even though Article 25 of the African Charter technically bars coup leaders from contesting elections that follows their coup. Guinea holds the world's largest reserves of bauxite, the raw material essential for aluminium. Aluminium is not optional in the modern world. It powers construction, aviation, electric vehicles, and renewable energy systems. Global supply chains cannot afford instability in Guinea, so the African Union chose to be pragmatic and flexible. They prioritized what they called a swift return to constitutional order, even though Article 25 of the African Charter technically bars coup leaders from contesting elections that follow their coup. But the rule bent, and this teaches us a lesson Africans must internalize. Resources shape tolerance. When you control something the world needs, timelines change, principles soften, conversations become quieter and more respectful. But here's the danger. If mineral wealth becomes only a shield for leadership longevity, then the people lose twice. First to instability and then to extraction without development. The real challenge for Guinea is not international acceptance. It is whether bauxite will translate into schools, power grids, and human dignity, or remain a bargaining chip for elite survival. Sovereignty is not just being welcomed back, it is being accountable once inside. Now we arrive at one of the most important stories of this year because it is about dignity. In January 2026, Guinea-Bissau's health minister, Queen Him Nantot, suspended a $1.6 million US-backed hepatitis B vaccine trial.
Guinea-Bissau has pushed the emergency brake on a US-backed hepatitis B vaccine study on newborns, pending an emergency ethical review. The country's health minister says a 6-member ethics committee never met before the study was approved, a major red flag. The trial would randomly vaccinate some newborns and withhold the shot from others, tracking illness, death and development. Critics say that's unethical because the vaccine is proven to protect babies in a country where hepatitis B is common. African CDC leadership supports the review, saying decisions must serve African public health, not outside interests. But US health officials insist the study is still moving forward. The project is funded by a $1.6 no-bid US contract to a Danish research team linked to anti-vaccine controversies and praised by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Now, let that sit. This trial was funded by the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and led by Danish researchers from the Bandim Health Project. The plan was to enroll 14,500 newborns. The design, half of the infants will receive the hepatitis B vaccine at birth, the global WHO standard. The other half would be deliberately denied that birth dose, receiving their first shot only at 6 weeks. Why, you may ask? Researchers claim that they wanted to study so-called non-specific effects of neurodevelopment and mortality. Public health experts immediately raised alarms. Dr. Paul Offit and others asked a simple, devastating question. Why withhold a proven life-saving intervention in a country where 1 in 5 people already live with hepatitis B? Comparisons were made to the Tuskegee experiment, where treatment was withheld from black men in the name of science. When the Africa CDC announced the trial was cancelled, the response from Washington was revealing. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, under Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., reportedly pushed back, calling the Africa CDC a powerless fake organization and insisting the trial proceed. Guinea-Bissau refused. Minister Nantold appeared publicly in military fatigues. He stated clearly that the trial was suspended or cancelled because Guinea-Bissau's own ethics committee lacked the technical capacity to fully evaluate the risk. This was not ignorance, this was restraint. Africa CDC Director General Jean Kasaya responded firmly. We are led by the interest of our people in Africa, not the small interest of individual people. This moment matters. For decades, Africa has been treated as a convenience laboratory, cheap, compliant, and grateful. This decision signals a break from that past. Medical sovereignty does not mean rejecting science. It means refusing exploitation dressed as research. Africa is learning the system well enough to say no. Now we end with reclamation, both economic and cultural. But first, the economics. Niger Market Day has announced its major 2026 expansion into North America, Houston on April 11th and Buffalo on August 29th.
So Niger Market Day, although it has the name Niger, which kind of means Nigeria, but our markets across Africa is basically the same thing, you know, from food to culture to clothing to wares to entertainment, you know, it's all rounder, like we call it. So we'll be having the market at the Fox this year. We started in Winnipeg, and we've been to like 5 different cities already. And Winnipeg, we are back home.
That is amazing. So this is your second time in Winnipeg?
Oh, yes.
How has it been received in other markets?
It's been absolutely phenomenal. We started with Brampton this year. The mayor and the city received us, and it was absolutely beautiful. We had loads of food, we had fashion, we had, you know, cultural exchange, because again, at the Niger Market Day, typical to our markets in Nigeria, you see different cultures. So you could see Chinese, you could see Indians. It's an wholesale market. So when you come in, you know, it's wholesale, you get loads of deals, good music, good food. Like we were saying to the mayor yesterday, come hungry if you're coming.
Oh, nice.
And you'll have a lot to eat and drink and merry. And it's a family-oriented event, so everybody's welcome to attend.
This is not a food fair. It is infrastructure. This is more than a food festival. It is a business development platform that trains African SMEs in financial literacy, compliance, and branding so they can hit mainstream retail shelves. The goal is simple but revolutionary. Move Nigerian-made products from nostalgia markets into mainstream retail supply chains. This year, they are launching a power list of 1,000 African entrepreneurs in North America to connect them directly with investors, policymakers, and to the global capital. This is the diaspora evolving from remittance senders to system builders. The diaspora is moving from sending home survival money to building structural wealth. This is how we reclaim our pride, not through noise, but through the mastery of global trade systems. Now onto the culture. This week, Turkey officially identified 76 wooden and metal artifacts believed to belong to Nigeria. Discussions are underway for their repatriation. These items were flagged in May 2025 and are now ready for their journey home as soon as Nigeria formalizes the claim. The Turkish ambassador met with Nigeria's Minister of Culture, Anatu Musawa, and Turkey is even proposing a cultural center in Nigeria to teach traditional acts and empower young Nigerian women. Minister Anatu Musawa says this makes Nigeria the gateway to Black global community. These artifacts are not decorations, they are memory, identity, evidence. Reclaiming our artifacts is about reclaiming our narrative. When we own our history, we gain the confidence to direct our future. Economic power and cultural memory move together. As we close, let us return to Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. The truth is our environment is testing us and the road is hard. The honesty is that we have been exploited for too long and our systems are still catching up. The justice is found in our refusal to be exploited, our willingness to build, and that we are finally starting to say no to the wrong trials and yes to the right trade deals. The world is not random. Power follows logic. Now you've seen the logic. Do not just scroll. Do not just joke. Understand the system. My name is Crises. Thank you for joining us on Waywayves. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until we see you again next time.